Hello everyone. I just wanted to make this video on the Frank Fischer and Robert Carter collaboration knife called the Warbird, which is their newest collaboration. And, you know, I figured that in times like these, I really enjoyed the content that some of the YouTubers have been making, so I figured, why not make one of my own? So hopefully you guys can see and enjoy the knife even if you don't listen to what I have to say. I'll try to show you some of the details on this knife. This is a custom build knife, and it is my own spec. I talked to Robert early on when I saw the first few Warbirds that, hey, I wanted one of these in a bolster lock, and I think I wanted to go with an all black theme, and I thought it would be interesting to have different shades of black, and I think that it would look very good, on the all black theme. So it'll look more like a stealth bird, like one of those stealth bombers. And so we started choosing different materials. The first is the Intemperate Damascus. This is just one of my favorite Damascus patterns. You get really cool blacks, very nice patterns. You can see on both sides the pattern looks nice and consistent. And I put this on the pivot collars as well, and I also wanted it on the backspacer, which Robert was very kind enough to say yes to all of my requests. And then the second is the bolster. I wanted black and titanium, but in the past, the one I've owned scratches really easily, and I wanted something that's a little bit more rugged. So Robert says, hey, that's no problem. Actually, they have like a ceramic coating that they can do on it. So it stands up really well, and yes, you can feel the texture, and yes, it can really stand up to scratches. Not that I've carried it, but I can tell that something like this will be quite tough. I think Frank Fischer did a video a while back on his ceramic coatings. Those two work together very closely, so the technique must have been passed on. But when Frank tried testing his ceramic finish, it was pretty tough. Yeah, I was quite impressed with that. Titanium is not the most, or not the hardest material ever, so it can scratch quite easily, especially on the polished ones. So I'm really glad how this turned out to be, a nice matte black finish. And the third is the nice carbo quartz scales. If you guys don't know, these things are really expensive, almost as expensive as Damascus or other exotic materials. But I think it just looks great, You get this nice shimmering effect on it. Very, very cool. So now on to the fitment of each part. So this is a bolster lock build, so you can't see any screws on the knife except for the pivot, which essentially means that the screws have been done inside. Hidden hardware bolster lock build. I think this is the most beautiful configuration, just because if you don't have any screws showing, and because it's a bolster lock, you get the strength and arguably for me the convenience of a frame lock. When you go to disengage the lock bar, sometimes in a liner lock you can pinch your thumb between the liner and the lock bar. So, or the scale and the lock and the liner, you know. But you don't have such issues with this bolster lock. So now onto the action. You know, I think the mechanism is perfectly tuned. I've always complained about how, you know, some knives may have very hard detents, which, you know, really will hurt your finger after you flip it for a while. And some knives have detents that are too soft, where I like to say that if you give someone who's not experienced with the knife or a folding knife, you know, usually if the detent's too hard, they won't be able to open it. If it's too soft, it'll just come out halfway, you know, like this. But that does not happen with the Warbird. You know, Robert really tuned it perfectly. So you just touch it and it always fires. Perfect detent in my book. It just fires so effortlessly. And yes, it is one of those, you know, smooth drop shutty knives, which, you know, I don't have any, a lot of people like it a lot. For me, I don't mind it as much. It's cool that it's drop shut, but what I like is how smooth it is when you feel the blade shutting. You know, this knife is not one of those buttery smooth knives. I can still feel the ball rolling a little bit. You can maybe kind of see it when I'm closing, you know. But it is still quite enjoyable. And I'm sure that, you know, in the long run, it'll break in even more. And you know, again, I remember that my old Frank Fischer had a similar action to this one, but with a harder detent. So, you know, the makers can tune it how you like it. You just have to ask them, like, hey, you know, I've seen the video of this knife somewhere, and then you can just tell them what type of action you like, and they'll make it just right for you. And you know, this is one of those knives where even though I haven't owned it for a long time yet, I can tell that, you know, there are some pieces where from even high-end makers, if you flip it, you know, 1,000, 10,000 times, you know, you can start to have some rock if you know, release the blade like this and you play. You can have a little bit of a left and right play, and that does not happen with Frank's or Robert's knives, which is something that's really, you know, desirable. When the Warbird first launched, it had like quite a big flat area right here, and I thought that, you know, it wasn't as attractive for me, so I told Robert, hey, can you push the grind up a bit so it has a high grind, just a single straight line down, you know, instead of like the flats? And he said, okay, sure, I can do that. And I just think the grind turned out very, very nicely. Nice recurve blade, and if you stand it, actually the blade touches the floor first, touches the ground, so it's easy for, you know, this type of cutting. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.